Hi everyone, it's good to be here, and I received quite a number of questions from you, and some of them are pretty interesting. So let's just begin.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. This is Kiran Farooq. Well, my first question to Najwa would be what inspired you to write the novel, specifically a crime novel, since they aren't very common in Pakistan?
Walaikum assalam, and yeah, I guess maybe it isn't normal. Eh, since I was a child, I think I've been reading mostly, adventure stories and adventure novels, and maybe that's the reason why I ventured towards this genre. But to be honest, when I started writing, even though I really wanted to write adventure novels, and I started with children's books, um, obviously adventure oriented. But I found that I was more inclined to write uh, about life and people, more like character oriented stories, uh, like this book, a novel that's coming up in January. This I wrote in the 90s as well. This is one of my older works where, despite the fact that I sort of forced myself to write adventure stories, I always ended up writing more character oriented stories. So I think the time when I actually managed to sort of master writing crime fiction the way it should be written was when I did my master's in script writing. Um, my head of department, who was also my supervisor, he helped me a lot there because when I was writing one of my scripts for I mean, it was supposed to be about a spy. It was supposed to be a dark comedy, and the spy thing was supposed to be just left in the background. The main story, the main plot, the main storyline was supposed to be around the person working as a part timer in a shop, in customer services, in sales. So my teacher was like, "Why don't you bring all that background into the foreground, make that your main story?" And I sort of tried to resist it because I knew I wasn't very good at it. But thanks to him, I managed that, and that was the result of also my other two novels. The Mist series, the novels that I wrote in the Mist series. They were a consequence of that. So I really thank him for that. Before that, I struggled. I mean, I love adventure and I love crime fiction, and I love all that, the that sort of darkness that this genre offers, the variety that you have in it. The I really wanted to always, yeah, I love this genre. That's why I wanted to write it. I never really thought that it was something that was not very normal. Although obviously when I started writing, I did realize that yes, in our country, in our region, we're more romance oriented or more, literary fiction oriented, not crime fiction. Yes, true. But this is what I've always been very interested in as a reader, because I guess maybe, yeah, that is, I was influenced by my childhood readings, and as I grew up I continued to read crime fiction. Maybe that's the only reason. Quite stereotypical, I know, but that is it.
And the subject of race and ethnicity within the novel. The character of Nain is a Kashmiri and Rafe is a British Pakistani. How are their experiences similar or different to each other within the context of racial politics?
Yeah, the racism. Um, I touched on it uh, deliberately because it is a fact. I mean, every society has it, whether you like to admit it or not. Generally, we have two types of racism. You have the ethnic conflict, and then you have the racial discrimination. When it comes to ethnic discrimination, that is when technically you all belong to the same country. You're supposed to be natives of that country, but because um, your ancestors belonged to different ethnicities or a different tribe or a different race, so you tend to keep that as your identity and then discriminate against each other. We have it in every country, even in England, and that's what I try to show through Rafe as well. That on one side you have Nan facing the same thing because, I mean, apparently she's living in the same land, but she's being heavily discriminated against, so much so that her region is being conquered, it's being invaded by India, and she had to flee her home for in order to get refuge just because of that. And then you have Rafe, who's British born, so essentially he's native, but he's being discriminated against. Why? Because in his case, it's twofold or maybe threefold. Because he is British born, but his father is Pakistani, and he's got Spanish blood in the mix. So the British, who in were once upon a time a third world country, finally managed to dominate a developed country of their time, became emperors, and they decided that yes, now we've made it to the top. We're superior. Everybody else is inferior. So they look down on their former colonials. There's that. And then there's the internal ethnic discrimination, which, you will find that uh, an Englishman, for example, would have against Welsh or Irish or Scots, and vice versa. And then you have the fact that he has continental blood in him. So, he's not one of us. That's the kind of the reaction that you would get from a typical white English native. But as Rafi mentions, it has its upside too, because ironically, the same organization or entity that is extremely racist or biased suddenly needs somebody who's different from them when they have to tackle sensitive situations, or when they have to deal with foreign diplomacy or even international crime. They need somebody who is not one of us. So that's how I've tried to put both sides of the racism story, the pros and cons of being different in any society. Um, Essentially, racism stems from a feeling of superiority when suddenly you've decided that your identity makes you superior. I mean, originally we were all given identities and born into families and clans and tribes so that we should be able to identify ourselves, very simply put. But somewhere along, somehow, somebody decided that this also meant that you could declare yourself superior over others and subjugate them and dominate them and invade them. Islamophobia is a good example of dehumanizing your victims. Kashmir is a brilliant example. They have dehumanized Kashmiris so that the world, just ignores whatever is going on. It's been going on for decades. People don't care. Palestine is another perfect example. It's as if Palestinians are not humans, you know. There's always that but, you know, oh, but you see, oh, but you see. So there's all these buts that are actually justification for domination and invasion and hate crimes and religious crimes and ethnic cleansing, and they all come from that place, you know. That but also comes from that place where somebody suddenly decides that somebody is superior enough to have the right to commit atrocities towards others. That is basically what I try to portray without being too heavy handed about it. So their discrimination, their racism is similar, but at the same time, it's different. So Rafe is a foreigner and a native in his own land. Nan was a foreigner and a native in her own land. Uh, but then Rafe had the added uh, issue, you could say, of having a mixed racial background, um, which Nan didn't. So, but still, that would not put her in a bad situation. She would still be able to understand his problems, his issues of racism, just as well. And we have a question from Rehan Hafiz, Lahore, Pakistan. And he asks, do you feel it would be a different experience for you if you wrote another book by intertwining your life experience with some fictional bit, like in the ratio of 7 to 3? Um, Writing a book, intertwining my life. Uh, to be honest, I did, in fact, attempt such a book once. I ended up destroying it. Um, because at the end of the day, I guess I'm not very comfortable. Putting bits of your life into a book, just sprinkling it a bit, that makes a book real, obviously. But when you write about yourself, as you said, in a 7 to 3 ratio, um, that is probably something I'm never going to be comfortable with. I, in fact, attempted another book, which is one of my recent works that I'm still working on. So you can imagine that I'm still working on it because even though I started it off with uh, a lot more about my own life, my experiences, and uh, but at the end, I just had to take it more towards, a world of fiction and a world of fantasy, and I had to be more comfortable, or maybe to give the writing more depth and more to be more at ease, or to make the readers more at ease. I don't know, whichever. But yeah, I couldn't keep on writing that book until I had to change directions. And in fact, I'm not even sure if I will be able to complete that book as well, because uh, writing about oneself, it's easy when you know you're not going to share it with somebody. But when you are going to share it with somebody, you would rather write truth as fiction. Many writers have done that actually. There's they may start off writing a lot more truth, but they end up with a lot more fiction. Unless, of course, a writer explicitly writes about oneself, which is more or less an autobiography. Or, but yeah, this is not something every writer can do, I guess. But I've seen a lot of new writers who have been daring enough to write about their lives, and they've mentioned it very openly that they've written about their lives. Uh, but I don't think I would ever be able to do that.
So there are some questions that have been asked by more than one people, so I'm just gonna, you know, put them all as one. One of them was on my characters. How do I portray my characters so realistically? Are they based on real people, or you know, well, when it comes to my characters, um, they do not have to necessarily be based on real people, but yes, they are as real as can get. I think you can put it down to my innate sense of originality and realism. Whenever I try to put down a situation or write about a certain character, um, the that sense of honesty and originality persists within me to the extent that it forces me to try to keep it real. So every time I try to, romanticize a situation or a person, my mind immediately just puts a stop to it. It just reins it all in, and it forces me to become more real, more grounded. Um, like it's very similar. Uh, you can see that in my upcoming book, a novel, where the characters, the way they speak, the way they talk, the way they reason out things, you can easily recognize the background that they come from or the culture they represent, the society, the time, the era, the generation that they belong to. Just from the way they talk, you can understand the way that they think, the way their society thinks, the way their culture makes them think. So, people then from that particular region can identify with them instead of saying that, oh no, our people aren't like that. What are you talking about? What have you written about? Our people don't think like that. So the whole point is to stay as real as possible when writing about people and their situations. Similarly, about the Mist series, my female protagonist, many people said that they reminded her of me. She reminded them of me, sorry. That could, I can understand why. Because obviously, whenever you write a book, or whenever you draw a character, um, it doesn't matter if it's fiction or non-fiction. The writer will always put a bit of himself into it. You will always find something that you can relate to through the writer or with the writer. And those people who know the writer, they get to see glimpses of the writer, in his characters or her characters. And that's very normal, that's natural, because you're creating something. When you're creating something, you put a bit of you into it. That's how you give it life. So, yeah, but no, other than that, no, my characters are not inspired or influenced or taken from real people or prototypes. They are 100% original, and in their own world, they're 100% real.
Good morning, Nagwa. This is Namisha from California, US, and I guess I do have questions. I would like to know what motivated you to become a writer, and at what age did you start writing? When did you publish your first novel?
Hi, Namisha. Uh, I first started writing when I was pretty young. I think I was around 11 when I started writing. And at that point in life, my main reason for writing was um, essentially my love for words, the formation of words, um, the power of bringing imagination to life. And because I was pretty young myself, so my main goal, you could say, was to provide as much literature as possible for kids. And that is why the first novel that I published in the mid 90s, when I was a teenager at that point, was an adventure book for kids. And as I grew older, the reasons behind my writings changed, obviously. Um, the For example, the Mist series that I published a few years ago, that was a consequence of the observation of what was going on around us, the political situation, the global political corruption, the manipulation of people by certain organizations, both governmental and non governmental, pushing people towards war, uh, dehumanization of certain groups of people in order to justify genocide. So all these things, they were the reason behind my publishing the Mist series. And before that, when I was still in my teens and my 20s, I wrote because um, there was a lot of um, a sense of adventure, uh, a sense of promise that an unknown future seemed to give one, which is depicted in the novel that's about to come. Life makes a novel. A novel, the book itself says it all. Uh, this book, which is due in January, this one was influenced by my own uh, positivity, you know, my own excitement because I was just embarking towards the next chapter of my life. So, yeah, different books were a result of different influences or inspirations. There was, I don't think there was anyone, though, if you could say there was one constant in this whole, it was imagination, you know, just to be able to remove ourselves from this world and go into a world where we had a little more sense of control. That was basically it. And here's a question from Yusra Khan from United Arab Emirates. And she asks, in all of your books, your main character is always a female. Is there any particular reason for that?
Yeah, I guess when you put it that way, all the books that I've published to date have female protagonists and very strong ones at that, with very strong characters and personalities. But no, there was no such agenda behind it. It wasn't a deliberate act or a political statement or ideological statement or anything. I mean, to me, it was just normal because I was female. So, being female, writing in the perspective of a female was actually pretty normal. Uh, and to be honest, I think I was quite fair. Um, and I gave equal justification to the male counterparts in my stories. I mean, they're not just characters that revolve around the female lead to sustain the story, so to speak. They are actual um, uh, characters, that have a life of their own and have equal strength. And I think if this were a script, I could go so far as to say that they shared equal airtime. You would have your female lead and your male lead. Oh, my lips are sort of jamming up, feeling a bit numb because of the cold. So yeah, this distortion is not um, the audio itself. This is my mouth. But to move on, um, I wasn't really aware of the fact that my stories or my characters were unconventional. Yes, it took people to point it out to me. In fact, when someone from the BBC pointed it out and said that the mere fact that my lead was female in the script that I had written, and that it was in a world that was generally, I guess, um, male oriented, even though he didn't say that. But I mean, I'm sure that's what he was probably saying when he said that the very fact that it was um, that I had a female lead was in itself a selling point, because it went against the norms, and that alone would have a veteran actress or actor pick it up and make sure that it got made in Hollywood. So I found that very surprising, to be honest, because I mean, one doesn't expect Hollywood or any other media industry, for that matter, to find having strong female leads unconventional. But yes, looking back now, when I look at when I remember all the movies and the series and the serials that we've watched to date with female leads, they might begin by breaking conventions, but they do ultimately fall into some form of convention. That is true. And my world, my setting in which I've inserted my protagonists are, yes, I guess, what people would refer to as male oriented. The genre is referred to as male oriented, thrillers, spy thrillers, political thrillers, adventures. But I do believe that um, these were scenarios that could only apply to my protagonist because of their gender. You see, there are certain experiences that apply to um, people because of the occupation, you know, in life, because of their profession. And then there are experiences that are unique to gender. So, yeah, when I was writing a novel, or when I was writing the Mist series, or my other books, um, I did not deliberately sit down and think about gender or gender discrimination, because frankly, that's not how I'm wired to think. I think in terms of people, gender comes secondary. But when you sit down to write, you're essentially creating a world. And in that world, you have to stay true to it as much as you can. And you have to stay true to the real world in which you yourself reside. Um, because you have to think in terms of originality, and then you have to think in terms of what sounds real, keeping in mind the person's profession and the person's life, the person's background, and the person's gender. And then you have to move accordingly. And that's just what I did, um, to be honest. Um, but yes, if it ended up being unconventional, I guess it is unconventional. But I think it's good. It's good because you pick up a book, you pick it up because it belongs to a genre that you're most interested in, and then you have this complacent expectation that it's going to be just like more or less like the other books of this genre, and then whoa, you know, you get an unexpected surprise. And I think that is healthy. That's what the readers are looking for anyway. So it's good. It's a good thing. Um, but other than that, really, I didn't have any um, specific purpose behind um, having a female protagonist, or putting her through completely unconventional scenarios. To me, I was pretty normal.
Here it's more of a comment, less of a question on how my love for travel and languages is being portrayed in all of my books. It's true. I do love to travel and I do love languages. Um, I think it's because my parents used to travel a lot. We used to travel with them, and that increased our love for exploring the world, you know. But my kind of travel is less of, as a tourist, more of trying to integrate with the society and the people so that I can understand their point of view as natives. It's more objective somehow, when you tend to see a country the way its own people sees it, because then you tend to understand um, the difficulties, the pros, the cons, and you tend to understand them better, the people as well, where they come from. And I think that's, you could say it's the same when it comes to languages. The reason why I think I'm very good with languages is I just find it easy to understand how people think. When I understand how they think, then it's easy to understand how they would form sentences in their own language. And so it becomes easy for me to pick up the nuances, the their grammar, their vocabulary in general. It becomes easy. Um, Also, I think the biggest positivity that one gets from traveling and understanding different cultures and different people and languages is you really do understand that everything is more superficial. And when you just, strip all those layers away, at the end, you're all the same. We're all the same people with the same problems in life, and we're going through the same motions in life, and we have the same tensions in life and the same aims and ambitions and goals. And we're all just people trying to live our lives and making the best of what we have. And languages and cultures and uh, race, these are all superficial at the end of the day. And I think it shows in the way we speak, obviously. I think, it shows in my English. I mean, you wouldn't know where I'm from because I've lived in so many countries. And when you live in uh, different countries that speak the same language but in different dialects and with different accents, you know, that that too shows. And I think in a way it's a good thing because there's like a friend of mine who lived all over Pakistan. So you really could never pinpoint where exactly he's from when you listen to his Urdu. And I think that's in a way a progress on its own because then you don't identify yourself with any one place and you can identify yourself with so many places at the same time. Um, Traveling helps you think more universal, more global, less regional, you could say. And when that starts to reflect in your language, then I think it means you've made progress in life, at least some progress in life. And but yes, it has its difficulties because the fact that I seem to have acquired a completely different sort of English, which is an amalgamation of all the different dialects spoken in all the different English speaking countries. And it shows in my books. So because of that, I had a lot of trouble looking for um, an editor who could actually understand uh, a more multidimensional language as opposed to one that is restricted to a certain region. But I finally got one, but with great difficulty. So there was that. That's why in my books you tend to see a more international form of English, even though I guess some would argue that no, it's still standard English, but you can see bits and pieces of all the different um, countries and regions in the various expressions used in my books. And I think uh, I think that's okay. I think it's a good thing. Well, that wraps it up. Thank you everyone for participating in the session. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did. Some of you asked me more than one questions, but I just chose one of each because there were those that I felt were different and that I might not have answered before. And apart from that, you might have felt a little bit of an audio shift. That was because I answered some of the questions directly and then added them up later. Uh, but do keep sending me questions, I'll always answer them. I just wanted to keep this short and sweet. Um, do remember to grab your free ebook from Smashwords pre-sale of my upcoming book, a novel that's due for release on the 1st of January 2021, my New Year's gift to you. And it's also available for pre-order on Kindle, so you can place your order now and get it when it gets released. Also, don't forget to leave your feedback because it really does count. I give a lot of importance to my readers' views and reviews concerning my books, and I love to hear from them. What you liked about it, what you disliked about it, what you couldn't understand about it. Um, I love it when my readers tell me all about it. So this is me signing out. Bye.